Most people remember Saul Goodman as the comic relief of a brutal story. The sleazy lawyer with loud suits, louder commercials, and a name that sounded like a joke. Saul Goodman. But that's the lie. That's the mask. That's the performance Saul Goodman put on for the world, because it was easier than showing pain. The truth is, it absolutely sucks to be Saul Goodman. Because Saul Goodman wasn't born. He was built, piece by piece, lie by lie, out of broken dreams, shattered relationships, and a deep, unhealed wound that began long before the cameras rolled. Underneath the glitz and fast talk was a man named Jimmy McGill, someone who could have had a real future, who wanted to be good, who fought for legitimacy and love, and lost. And every time life kicked him down, he tried harder to play a role instead of being himself. That's the tragedy. Not that he turned into Saul Goodman, but that he had to. Jimmy McGill came from Cicero, Illinois, a forgettable place, and for Jimmy, a forgettable childhood. His father was kind, honest, and naive. Too honest to survive in a world of wolves. Jimmy watched as con artists stole from his father's corner store over and over. He saw goodness get punished. He saw how being trusting got you robbed, humiliated, left behind. And so young Jimmy decided he'd never be like that. If life was a scam, he'd be the one running it. He became Slippin' Jimmy, pulling fake injuries for quick cash, smooth-talking his way out of trouble, chasing the next hustle. But here's what people miss. Jimmy wasn't dumb. He wasn't just a petty criminal. He was smart. He was resourceful. Underneath the cons was a kid who wanted something more, someone who craved respect. He just never thought he'd get it the honest way. Then came Chuck McGill, the golden child, the older brother, the Harvard law genius, the partner at one of the most powerful firms in New Mexico. Chuck was everything Jimmy wasn't. Polished, disciplined, admired, and Jimmy worshipped him. When Jimmy messed up one scam too many and landed in real legal trouble, it was Chuck who pulled him out and told him to come to Albuquerque. A fresh start, a second chance. Jimmy took it seriously. He worked in the mailroom at Chuck's firm, HHM, delivering packages, making coffee, trying to stay clean. And something changed. Jimmy started believing he could rise, that he didn't have to be Slippin' Jimmy forever. He went to law school, not Harvard, not even state, but he put in the hours, passed the bar, and came back with a law license in hand, hoping to prove he was ready. Chuck smiled. He shook Jimmy's hand. Then he stabbed him in the back. Behind closed doors, Chuck told HHM's partners that Jimmy wasn't fit to be a lawyer at their firm, that his degree didn't count, that it would be a disgrace to the profession. Jimmy was humiliated. He wasn't even given an interview. He found out later it was his own brother who crushed him. That betrayal wasn't just personal. It rewrote how Jimmy saw the world. If the one person he looked up to, the one person he tried to impress, thought he'd always be a con man, then why even try to be anything else? Jimmy started cutting corners again, just little things at first. Bending ethics to help elderly clients, faking commercials to drum up business. But the further he drifted from the rules, the more success he saw, and the worse Chuck treated him. Their relationship deteriorated until it exploded in public. Chuck set a trap, caught Jimmy altering legal paperwork, and tried to have him disbarred. Jimmy, desperate, retaliated by exposing Chuck's debilitating mental illness in open court, proving he was unfit to testify. It saved Jimmy's career, but it destroyed Chuck's. Soon after, alone and spiraling, Chuck set his house on fire with himself inside. Jimmy never cried. He claimed it was Chuck's fault. But he knew. Deep down, he knew he helped kill his brother, and instead of healing, he buried it. He told himself it didn't matter, that Chuck never cared about him, but it ate away at him. He couldn't go back to being Jimmy McGill after that. He didn't deserve to. He found comfort in one person, Kim Wexler, his colleague, his partner, his best friend. Kim saw the good in Jimmy even when he couldn't see it himself. She believed in him. She encouraged him to rise, and for a while, they brought out the best in each other. But even that turned sour. They started running scams together, harmless at first, then reckless. They orchestrated a complex plot to destroy Howard Hamlin's reputation, just to fast-track a settlement. They laughed about it. They thought it was victimless. But the night Howard came to confront them, Lalo Salamanca showed up and shot him in the head. Right there, in Jimmy and Kim's living room. A man they didn't hate. A man who didn't deserve it. Dead because of them. Kim broke. She left Jimmy, left the law, left everything. She couldn't bear the weight of what they'd done. Jimmy, alone again, sealed away his grief and guilt in the only thing he knew how to use, a mask. He fully became Saul Goodman, a neon-colored persona who never felt guilt, never paused, never stopped moving. He put up billboards, ran late-night commercials, joked about mobsters and bribes. He turned the law into theater, and himself into a punchline. But Saul Goodman wasn't a real person. He was Jimmy McGill's last defense against feeling anything. The persona served him well. It brought him clients, drug dealers, criminals, murderers. It brought him power, money, and street credibility. It also brought him to Walter White. Saul became a critical piece of Walt's drug empire, laundering money, setting up shell companies, and navigating legal loopholes. And while Walt was out blowing up nursing homes and poisoning children, Saul kept the gears turning. He saw the destruction. He felt the danger, and he kept going. Because Saul Goodman didn't flinch until everything collapsed. When Walt's empire fell, Saul ran. He paid a man to erase him from existence and started over as Gene Takovich, a sad, lonely manager of a Cinnabon in Omaha. Gone were the suits. Gone were the commercials. Gone was the voice. Just a balding man with dead eyes, living in a bland apartment, watching his old life on VHS tapes like they were scenes from a dream. He lasted like that for years. No friends, no family, no contact, just shame and survival. Until one day he slipped again. He started pulling cons, small scams with stolen identities, just to feel alive, just to feel something. And that's what finally got him caught. Even then, Saul tried to talk his way out of it. He negotiated a plea deal. 7 years in a cushy prison. He almost pulled it off, but then he heard what Kim had done. She had confessed. She had owned her role in Howard's death, and that changed something. In court, he stopped the performance. He told the truth. He admitted everything, not just about Walt or the money, but about Chuck, about his brother, about himself. And for the first time in years, Saul Goodman disappeared. Jimmy McGill stood in front of a judge and took the fall, fully, without excuses, and he was sentenced to 86 years in federal prison. Now he's just a man in a jumpsuit walking alone through a cold yard, remembered only as a cautionary tale. The inmates know who he is. They call him Saul Goodman with a smirk, but that name doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just a shadow of a man who lost everything that mattered because he didn't believe he was good enough to keep it. He could have been a great lawyer, a loving husband, a man who helped people. But the world, his pain, and his own choices turned him into something smaller, something sadder. And now he lives out the rest of his days in silence. The cons gone, the applause gone, the mask finally off. That's why it sucks to be born as Saul Goodman, because Jimmy McGill had the potential for greatness, but his life became a slow-motion tragedy of missed chances, bad decisions, and the desperate need to be anyone but himself. Every time he reached for love, he pushed it away. Every time he told himself he was doing the right thing, he cut another corner. Every time someone believed in him, he gave them a reason not to. And in the end, he became a hollow legend, famous, infamous, unforgettable, and utterly alone. Saul Goodman didn't die in prison. He died long before that, the moment Jimmy stopped believing he could ever be enough. And that's what makes his story not just sad, but devastating.